She never thought a bowl of soup could ruin her life. But today, that's exactly what happened. The manager called her out in front of everyone, said she was being careless, giving away food to a homeless man without permission. Just like that. She lost her job. Emily's hands shook as she packed up her things, the warmth of the soup still lingering in her palms, but her heart was ice cold. She thought she was helping someone who needed it. Instead, she was being punished for it. Outside, the streets kept moving, but Emily felt like she was standing still, caught in a moment where kindness became a crime. And everything she worked for slipped through her fingers. The cafe was usually noisy in the afternoon, filled with the chatter of regulars and the hiss of espresso machines. But now, silence pressed on her like a heavy blanket. The customers looked away, some with pity, others with thinly veiled annoyance. The manager's sharp voice echoed in her ears. "You can't just give food away. This isn't a charity." But Emily had only seen a hungry man, one who had no one to turn to, whose hands trembled as he sipped the hot coffee she had made for him earlier. His clothes were worn thin, his eyes tired but thankful. She couldn't ignore the hunger she saw. Not today. Not ever. Her mind drifted to her son, Noah, waiting at home in their small apartment. She imagined his soft breathing as he slept, his small stomach surely aching. Every night was a battle to keep food on the table, to shield him from the growing worries that filled her own mind. Losing this job meant risking more than just income. It meant risking his hope for a better tomorrow. Emily's throat tightened as she stepped outside. The late afternoon sun casting long shadows on the cracked sidewalk. The world went on without pause. Cars sped by. People hurried along, but she felt invisible, like a ghost no one noticed. Her thoughts returned to the man she had helped. The veteran who rarely spoke but sat quietly in the corner. She remembered the way he nodded slightly when she placed the soup before him, a silent thank you in his tired eyes. That moment, brief and simple, had been her act of rebellion against a world that demanded she look away. The pain of losing her job wasn't just about money. It was about being told that compassion had no place here, that helping someone less fortunate was a punishable offense. She wondered how many others had been pushed aside, how many small acts of kindness had been crushed under the weight of rules and fear. Her phone buzzed, breaking her thoughts. It was a message from the landlord. Rent was overdue. The balance was growing heavier, and she could almost hear the faint knock of eviction creeping closer. Emily swallowed hard, wiping tears that had escaped without permission. She had to be strong. For Noah. For the man she had tried to help. For herself, at home, the apartment smelled faintly of stale bread and old laundry. The worn couch where Noah slept was covered with a thin blanket, his small chest rising and falling in peaceful sleep. She watched him for a moment, memorizing the innocence she feared the world would steal. She had worked so hard, double shifts, late nights, early mornings, anything to keep a roof over their heads and food in the fridge. Punished for doing what felt right, standing on the edge of losing it all. Her memories flickered to better times. When Noah was a baby and she believed the world was kinder, she thought love and hard work would be enough. But life had other plans, and those plans were harsh and unforgiving. The veteran's face came back to her lines, etched deep by years of struggle. Eyes that had seen too much pain, she wished. She could do more than offer a bowl of soup. She wished the world would open its heart just a little wider. The night stretched long and heavy as Emily sat alone, the weight of despair pressing on her chest. But beneath the darkness, a quiet fire began to glow, a stubborn hope that refused to be extinguished. She would not give up. Not now, not ever. Because kindness, even when punished, was still the bravest thing she could offer. And somewhere in the shadows, she felt the first stirrings of a new chapter, one where justice might find its way, carried on the shoulders of those who still believed in doing what was right. Emily lay awake that night, the thin mattress beneath her offering little comfort against the storm raging inside her chest. The quiet apartment, once a sanctuary, now felt like a cage. Every creak of the old pipes, every distant siren outside the cracked window, pulled her deeper into a loneliness she hadn't known before. She thought about the cafe, the moment she was called out, the stinging words that echoed in her mind like a cruel refrain. "You're fired." For feeding a hungry man, her son, Noah, stirred softly beside her. She reached out, brushing a stray lock of hair from his forehead, trying to will away the knot of fear tightening inside her. Fracture in their lives. How would she explain that sometimes the world punished you for being kind? Days passed like shadows, heavy and slow. Emily sent out applications for new jobs, but the weight of her recent firing clung to her like a dark cloud. Interviews came and went, each ending with polite thanks and silent rejection. The unemployment office was a cold place, filled with faces like hers, tired, worn, and carrying invisible burdens. The neighbors in her building offered little comfort. Mrs. Reed, the woman across the hall, barely nodded when Emily passed by, her eyes darting away as if afraid to get involved. In the laundry room, a group of women whispered just loud enough for Emily to catch fragments, complaints about the noise, the children, the people they didn't want around. Emily felt like a ghost drifting through the margins of their lives. Her pride battled with desperation. Every night, she told herself to stay strong, to keep fighting, but the isolation gnawed at her. At the grocery store, she avoided the aisles where the veterans often gathered, ashamed of how little she could offer now. The warmth she had once shared felt like a distant memory, fading with each passing day. Even Noah sensed the change. Brightness in his eyes dimmed, and his questions grew quieter. When he asked why she wasn't working anymore, Emily would swallow hard, forcing a smile and saying, "I'm looking, sweetie." But the truth hung heavy between them. Money was tight, and hope was thinner than ever. One afternoon, as Emily sat on a park bench, watching Noah play quietly with a worn ball, a small act broke through the fog. An elderly man, stooped and slow, approached her with a gentle smile and a paper bag. Inside were sandwiches and a bottle of water, a simple gesture of kindness from a stranger who must have seen her silent struggle. Tears welled in Emily's eyes, but she took the bag with a grateful nod. For the first time in weeks, she felt seen, not for her mistakes or her failures, but as a human being worthy of compassion. This small kindness planted a fragile seed of hope in Emily's heart. Maybe she wasn't alone after all. Maybe, even in the coldest moments, warmth could still find its way. But the challenges remained. The landlord's letters piled up, warnings of eviction growing more urgent. Bills went unpaid, and the phone calls from debt collectors became more frequent. The weight of shame pressed down harder with every knock on the door and every suspicious glance from neighbors. At the job center, a counselor named Lisa tried to offer encouragement. She was one of the few who didn't look away. Lisa spoke softly about training programs, about support groups, about rebuilding from the bottom up. Emily listened, grateful for the threat of kindness, but her heart was heavy with doubt. Could she rebuild when the world seemed determined to break her? Even the veterans' shelter, a place Emily once thought of as a refuge for those forgotten, felt out of reach. The man she had fed, the one whose eyes had held so much pain, had disappeared. She wondered where he was now, if anyone else had offered him a meal, or if he was still waiting for kindness in a world that rarely gave it freely. Isolation deepened, but so did Emily's resolve. Each night, she whispered promises to herself and to Noah, vows to find a way through the darkness. She clung to memories of that simple act of kindness, the bowl of soup, and the unexpected gift from the stranger in the park. Slowly, she began to see that suffering was not just a place of despair, but a space where hope could quietly grow. It was the silence after the storm, the pause before the dawn, and Emily was ready to listen. The morning light filtered weakly through the thin curtains, casting soft, uneven patterns across the worn floor of Emily's small apartment. She sat at the edge of the bed, a stack of rejection emails on her phone, glowing dimly like wounds that refused to heal. Yet today, unlike the others, there was one message that didn't make her chest tighten in despair. It was a simple note from a community center a few blocks away. They were looking for someone to help organize food drives and assist with outreach programs. No fancy qualifications needed, just a heart willing to serve. Emily stared at the screen, the words swimming before her eyes. Could she trust this? Was this just another empty hope disguised as kindness? The scars left by her recent firing were raw and aching. Every step forward felt like walking on cracked glass. She thought back to the cafe, the cold eyes of the manager, the shame burning, hotter than any winter chill. The echo of that moment haunted her being, told her kindness was a crime, that helping someone meant losing everything. Could she risk opening herself up again? The memory of Noah's small, hopeful face gave her a fragile courage. She pictured him playing in the park, the worn ball rolling between his tiny hands. She wanted to believe in a future where he wouldn't have to hide hunger behind a smile. That afternoon, Emily made her way to the community center, heart pounding with every step. The building was modest, but alive with quiet purpose. Volunteers bustled about, their faces warm and welcoming. She met Lisa, again the counselor from the job center, who was helping coordinate the outreach program. Lisa's calm presence was like a balm, a reminder that kindness still had a place in the world. Emily hesitated before speaking, her voice barely above a whisper as she asked if there was room for someone like her, someone who had stumbled but still wanted to help. Lisa smiled gently, assuring her that everyone deserved a chance. The first few days were hard. Emily felt like an outsider, her confidence fragile as glass. She fumbled with the paperwork, stumbled over names and schedules. Doubts whispered cruel lies. Maybe she wasn't good enough. Maybe she didn't belong here. But slowly, the rhythm of the work began to weave its way into her soul. Organizing food drives, connecting with others who had faced hardship, sharing small victories, it gave her a sense of purpose she hadn't felt in months. At night, she wrestled with memories that refused to fade. The cold dismissal from the cafe, the loneliness of the apartment, the fear etched in Noah's eyes. She asked herself if she was strong enough to keep moving forward. Yet with each morning came a tiny spark of hope, a whisper that maybe, just maybe, the world could be kinder than she feared. One evening, while sorting donated clothes, Emily found a note tucked inside a jacket pocket. It was from a veteran who had once struggled with homelessness, thanking the volunteers for their care. The words felt like a warm hand reaching through the darkness. That night, as Noah slept peacefully beside her, Emily allowed herself a moment to breathe, to imagine a future where kindness was not punished but celebrated. The road ahead was uncertain, and the wounds still deep, but for the first time in a long time, Emily felt ready to walk toward the light, because sometimes the smallest opportunity could become the greatest turning point. For a few weeks, Emily allowed herself to believe that maybe, finally, things were beginning to turn around. The small victories at the community center became bright spots in her days. She smiled more easily, laughed sometimes, and watched Noah's face light up when she came home with little surprises, a new book, a treat from the food pantry. But life has a cruel way of testing the fragile threads of hope. Just when she thought the storm might pass, the winds shifted sharply against her. One morning, Emily's phone rang with a voice she dreaded: the landlord. The rent was overdue again. This time, there would be no extension. The eviction notice was official, stamped with a cold authority that left no room for mercy. Her heart sank, a heavy stone dropping deep into her chest. She called the community center, hoping for a miracle, some extra help. Alone, anything to hold on. But resources were stretched thin. They were doing everything they could, but they couldn't save her this time. The apartment that had once been a refuge felt like a prison now. The walls closed in, the creaks of the pipes sounded like whispers of failure. She looked at Noah, who was coloring quietly at the kitchen table, unaware of the shadow growing over their lives. The fear that had once been a distant echo now screamed loud and raw. Where would they go? How could she protect him when she couldn't even protect their home? Her nights were restless. Tears came unbidden, and she found herself questioning everything: her worth, her choices, the kindness she had clung to like a lifeline. Maybe she was wrong. Maybe the world was too cruel for hope. Emily remembered the warmth of the soup she had given the veteran, the smiles she'd shared at the center, the kindness of strangers. Were those memories just illusions, fragile dreams destined to shatter? Her phone was silent, except for the messages from debt collectors and landlords. The social workers she reached out to offered sympathy, but little else. The walls around her seemed to close tighter with every passing day. Noah sensed the change too. His questions grew fewer, his eyes darker, the light in his laughter dimming. Emily's heart broke a little more each time she saw the weight of their struggle reflected in his small face. One evening, after putting Noah to bed, she sat on the floor, her back against the cold wall, the exhaustion pulling at her until she felt numb. She wanted to scream, to cry, to give up entirely. But beneath the despair, beneath the exhaustion and fear, something stubborn remained, a fragile ember of love for her son, a whisper of the strength she didn't know she had. Emily closed her eyes and let the tears fall, not hiding the pain, not pretending to be strong. In that raw moment, she was more human than ever, flawed, broken, scared, but fiercely holding on, because sometimes hitting the lowest point is the only way to find the courage to rise again. The days after the eviction notice blurred together in a heavy haze, but slowly, Emily's spirit began to stir. She woke each morning feeling the weight of uncertainty, yet beneath it, a quiet flame flickered, small, fragile, but alive. It wasn't a grand awakening, no sudden epiphany or heroic burst of strength. Instead, it was in the gentle moments, the way Noah's sleepy smile softened her fear, the way a soft breeze stirred the curtains in the empty apartment, reminding her that life still moved forward. One afternoon, as Emily walked down a busy street, her thoughts tangled in worry, she noticed a young woman sitting on the sidewalk, clutching a worn backpack. Her face was drawn tight with exhaustion and hopelessness. Without thinking, Emily stopped and offered her a bottle of water, her voice soft but steady. The woman looked up, surprise flickering in her eyes, before gratitude warmed her face. They shared a quiet conversation, stories of struggle, moments of loss, and Emily realized how deeply connected their pain was. Helping this stranger, offering kindness without expectation, was a balm she hadn't known she needed. Back at the community center, Lisa noticed a subtle change in Emily. Her steps were surer, her eyes more open. One evening, Lisa sat with her and spoke gently about resilience, how sometimes healing wasn't about forgetting the pain, but learning to carry it differently. Emily listened, feeling the truth settle softly inside her. She wasn't just surviving. She was beginning to live again, with renewed purpose. She started volunteering more at the center, organizing food drives, and supporting others who faced hardship. Each act of kindness, each small victory, became a stitch, sewing her fractured heart back together. When a fellow volunteer faced eviction, Emily didn't hesitate. She rallied the community, organizing donations and support. Seeing the relief in that person's eyes reminded her why she kept fighting, not for herself alone, but for everyone who deserved a chance. Her relationship with Noah deepened too. She shared stories of hope, of courage, teaching him that kindness was strength, not weakness. Watching him grow, she felt her own healing ripple outward, a quiet but unstoppable tide. Though challenges remained, Emily carried them with a new grace, the grace of someone who had been broken and was learning to be whole in the stillness of the night. When the world was silent, she whispered promises, not only to Noah, but to herself. Promises of patience, of love, of unyielding hope, because sometimes the greatest strength is found not in victory, but in the gentle courage to keep moving forward. The day came quietly, without fanfare, as if the world itself was holding its breath. Emily stood outside the cafe where she had lost her job months before, the same place where her kindness had been punished. The sign above the door gleamed in the afternoon sun, but her eyes were fixed not on the building, but on the hope that had slowly, painfully grown inside her. Inside, the manager was unaware that Emily had returned not as a defeated victim, but as someone who had found a new strength through struggle. She didn't come seeking revenge or anger, only to speak her truth. She told him about the community center, the lives she had touched, and how kindness had not been her weakness, but her quiet power. She shared the story of Noah, and how even in the darkest moments, love had pushed her forward. The manager listened, his face unreadable at first, but then softened with a reluctant respect. He admitted he had judged too quickly, blinded by his own fears and the harsh pressures of business. There was no grand apology, no dramatic gesture, only a simple acknowledgement that things could have been different, that she deserved better. For Emily, that moment was enough. It wasn't about winning or losing. It was about reclaiming her dignity, her voice, and her heart. Later that evening, as she walked home holding Noah's hand, she felt a lightness she hadn't known in months. The journey had been painful and full of setbacks, but it had led her here to a place of quiet peace and hope. She had learned that true justice wasn't a sudden miracle, but the slow, steady work of healing and forgiveness, starting with herself and Noah's bright eyes. She saw the future she had fought for, a future built not on fear or shame, but on the enduring strength of kindness. And for the first time in a long time, Emily believed that no matter what lay ahead, she was ready. Because sometimes the most beautiful victories are the ones we win within. Months passed like quiet waves, steady and sure. Emily and Noah moved into a small apartment filled with sunlight and the laughter of new beginnings. The shadows of their past still lingered in corners, but they no longer held power over their lives. Emily found steady work at the community center, not just as a volunteer, but as a coordinator who helped others rebuild their own broken pieces. Each story she touched was a reminder of her own journey, the pain, fight, the quiet courage that had carried her through. Noah grew stronger every day, his smile bright and fearless. He spoke often about kindness and hope, lessons learned not from books, but from the lived example of his mother's unwavering heart. Sometimes, late at night, Emily would sit by the window and remember the darkest moments, the eviction notice, the crushing fear, the tears shed in silence. And yet, those memories no longer weighed her down. Instead, they became the roots of a resilience that blossomed in the light of her love and determination. She had learned that life's hardest trials could break a person, but they could also build them anew, stronger and more compassionate than before. Emily knew there would be challenges still ahead, but she faced them now with a steady heart and open hands, because she had discovered the most profound truth, that even in the face of injustice and loss, kindness could transform pain into hope and suffering into redemption. As she held Noah close, Feeling the steady beat of his small heart, she whispered, "A promise to keep fighting, to keep loving, and to never forget the strength found in gentle kindness." Her story was no longer one of defeat, but of quiet victory, a testament to the power of the human spirit to rise, to heal, and to shine. And in that light, they both found home.